Good morning. We've got a tight agenda this morning, so I think we'll get started. Welcome to Keeping the Lights On. This morning's discussion is around infrastructure and cybersecurity. My name is Ashley Brinson. And I'm the Executive Director at the Warren Center. We're tweeting today on hashtag TWC Innovation, and those of you that know what to do, know what to do. So let the tweets come. To set the scene, the Warren Center began discussing cybersecurity about a year and a half ago, and we asked what could we do to contribute to the public and community discussion, and we decided that because the Warren Center has some deep connections in energy generation, transmission, and distribution, and a long history of advocacy around building cities and the transition to smart cities and smart infrastructure, that a discussion on cybersecurity and fixed infrastructure would be the right place to engage. And so that's the impetus for today. We see rapid transition in technology in our energy generation, in the new grid that's coming with distributed generation and on-demand sort of supply and demand balance. There's a rapid deployment of technology that was spoken about at our last energy-focused event when Paul Graham from CSIRO and Merv Davis spoke about the reforms and changes that are happening with the energy grid. We also see rapid deployment of Internet of Things technology in the infrastructure that's being built around the city of Sydney. So with the driverless trains that will come from Sydney Metro, and with the tens of billions of dollars of infrastructure that are being built around transportation and new city structure, we see not just the fixed timetables for transport from New South Wales, but that last kilometer of transportation may be on demand, scheduling of buses, and increasingly we're all becoming more dependent in a good way on the smart technology that's on these things in our pockets. And so the discussion today is to amplify awareness of some of the issues that are there and to connect people that are in the engineering community with those that are in the community of policy and providing solutions for the space. And with that opening, I'll move perhaps just to a bit of a personal story about cybersecurity and infrastructure. In 2003, 2004, I was working for a company called Dow Corning, and the announcement was made that we were going to go to China and build a $1.5 billion silicon factory in China. And immediately we were hounded by the IT people of the company, that the hard drives had to be encrypted, that we had to do encrypted communications with pretty good privacy PGP keys, and a long list of changes in behavior that were changes in personal behavior, changes in the IT hardware that we were using, so that we were upgrading to Blackberries at that time. We're at a very high standard. And then changing the behavior of people that we were managing, and then governing at a governance level, looking at the way that the organization was handling its data assets and its intellectual property assets and its trade secret assets in a way that we could sustain and preserve the competitive advantage that we had. And the disconnect from these policies and the reality hit home at 7 o'clock in the morning in Shanghai in about 2007, 2008, when my boss said, we've got to go and sort of look at what's really happening in the engineering offices. And so 6 or 8 of us got together around the table. Somebody brought the donuts, someone brought the coffee, and we departed on a mission to look at 9 offices that were going to be occupied at about 7:30, 7:45 to 8:30 in the morning with engineers who were drifting in to work on this big project. So we had, at that time, we had 3 offices, 3 buildings, 9 floors, and about 900 engineers working on a street corner in Shanghai. And on Saturday, that was sort of catch-up day, however much work there was to do. If the draftsmen had to catch up, they would come in on Saturday. So we were going to get in the offices early in the morning before the sun got hot, because the air conditioner didn't come on until sort of 8:30 in the morning. And what we found was shocking. And so if there's anything you carry away from today, this will be one of the little pieces perhaps that you remember, is on a personal level, we might have to change what we do with our IT to keep ourselves secure, to keep our organization secure. So there's sort of a personal demand on you to change what you're doing, perhaps. How you manage people in your organization also might require a change. And then at a governance level, the way that organizations check. So when we went out, 900 engineers had been deployed on a Monday, and 900 sticky notes with password credentials were distributed by the IT department. And of those 900, 250 were still sticking on the computer, on the screen of the computer with the login information and password. And so we took all of these away this morning, but we were shocked that this was the pattern of behavior. So that's a picture from my computer, and I've written this out, and it's a bit contrived. But if you see this in the office, if you do this yourself, you might want to review whether that's a good thing to do with your bank account details. If you see this in your office and you're responsible for protecting assets of your company, you might question that. The other big thing was the cybersecurity, physical security interface, and this isn't a real SCADA cabinet or distributed control system or PLC, but the engineers who've worked in the controls industry know that a lot of times these cabinets aren't locked up. The keys will be in the cabinet, and you might find some of the sticky notes hanging on the inside of the door with the password credentials and so forth. But we found doors open because it was hot in the offices, windows open overnight, and the control cabinet doors opened with the keys in the door and the password frequently hanging on the inside of the door, so it was easy for the systems engineers to work with this. So that was sort of the terrifying scenario of 2008, and we overcame that with a lot of training and behavioral advice, but really you have to personalize it and live it yourself before you can sort of enforce it on others. If this scenario sounds strange, I'll give you an even stranger scenario, and then I'll give a bit of an explanation before I hand it over to Hamish. Here's the scenario. It's this morning, and you've woken up late. Now, I was up packing to move house last night until about midnight. Waking up late could have been an outcome this morning. But you wake up late, and you're rushing through the house to get dressed, and you turn on the newscast, whether that's radio or television, whatever it is, and you hear a report on the newscast that says that there's been a flash of a bright light reported on York Street in Sydney, just above Wynyard Station, and the Sydney trains have shut down. Also, the power at the traffic lights just on this side of the bridge, the power is down and the traffic on the bridge is stalled. Traffic's moving through the tunnel, but it's going very slowly. And a similar flash of bright light was reported behind the Australian Stock Exchange building on Bridge Street, and fire trucks have responded to that flash. Interestingly, it's foggy in Canberra, and an airplane crash has been reported. An airplane has crashed between the Canberra airport and Parliament House in foggy weather on a flight that is bound to have been landed at 8:35 in the morning on inbound from Singapore. And interestingly, BBC and CNN are reporting that a lot of do not fly list people have shown up at airports in the United States and in Europe. And the third part of this scenario is interestingly or strangely, news media is reporting that people in Sydney are complaining that the water from the tap and from the shower smells like rotten eggs this morning. And so you say, wow, this is strange. And you go to your cell phone to see what's happening at the office and to tell people you're going to be a bit late, and you've got 250 new emails, and the memory has packed up on your cell phone. So with that sort of scenario, I'll just introduce that scenario, and if it's useful, we'll come back to it in the morning. It's a contrived scenario, but it's not all that contrived. In 2006, and on each of the even-numbered years since then, this scenario has been operated with multiple international parties And those elements are the elements that are in the public domain from Wikipedia from 2006. So with that introduction, brief as it is, I'll introduce you to Hamish Fraser. Hamish will be our moderator for the rest of the boarding. He's a technology lawyer with Bird & Bird Law Firm, an Anglo-Australian law firm that specializes in technology. Please welcome Hamish.
Thank you. I think with that rather frightening scenario, I think a lawyer's the last guy you're going to call. But maybe some of the panellists today are the sort of people you call. I do find it pleasing that examples like that, the frightening examples like that, are the sorts of things that are being considered and practiced by the people responsible for ensuring the security of the nation, the sort of homeland security type organisations. I think for mine, we see a lot of that kind of low-level password problem is actually the bigger problem that I encounter when people do think to call their lawyer. I hope it's intentional, but I did notice the password and security written up there in green on the whiteboard, so I hope that's part of the plan for today. What I thought we would do is look at that example and perhaps look at it from a higher level perspective, and then descend in after the morning tea break into a more practical perspective. And with that in mind, I'm going to invite three of our speakers to come up. That's Daniella, Traino, Dr. Frank Smith, and Kumar Parakala. Apologies, Kumar, I mentioned this morning. I'll briefly introduce them, and then I'll ask Daniella to sort of go over that scenario and perhaps look at the kind of vulnerabilities and the kind of examples that she's looking at. So you have, I hope, the CVs, but I will give you a quick rundown on people, and as I try to do, perhaps find out a little bit more about our speakers. And I've had a bit of a look at social media to see what I could find about our speakers, and I've obtained their consent to that search that I did. But let me begin by introducing Daniella Traino. Daniella is a business leader with Cybersecurity Data 61. She has worked with them for a number of years developing a cybersecurity business strategy, and is a participant in a number of activities. I thought the most interesting of which was that she was a leader of the cyber track at the 2016 Spark Festival, which was for innovators and startups. So I thought that was quite interesting. On Instagram, she declares she's a shoe queen and a bit of a tech geekette. The second speaker is Dr. Frank Smith from the Department of Government and International Relations at the University of Sydney. Frank is a visiting scholar with the Centre for Long-Term Cybersecurity at the University of California, Berkeley, and has a PhD in political science and a Bachelor of Science in biological chemistry. Interestingly, Frank, perhaps because of his name, was the only person I could find nothing about on social media. And thirdly, we have Kumar Parakala. Kumar is the lead digital advisor for GHD and has spent 15 years prior to that as a senior partner at KPMG. Kumar does, I should add, all of the speakers that I could find information about kept their privacy settings pretty good on Instagram. I was able to find a little bit about them, but not a lot. But I could find out from Kumar's Facebook that this week alone he's been in Perth and in Melbourne and enjoyed a good curry in Melbourne. I think it was a big year for that. So with that, perhaps I could ask Daniella to begin by sort of having a look at that scenario and having a look at from a high level at what's happening, and without me engaging further. Frank, you might take it from there and drill into a global perspective, and Kumar, lastly, perhaps you can look at the specifics from Australia. Okay.
Yeah. I think I had a couple of slides just to set the scene a little bit more broader. If we've got those available, I might just do so. Or no? Yes? Okay. It doesn't matter. I remember them. So a couple of things that I would probably say is that the scenario itself and the way it was presented might appear very apocalyptic, but if we boil it down and actually remove a lot of the FUD, so the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that usually gets associated with cybersecurity, in actual fact, these are events that, you know, if you're a Sydney-sider, you're regularly hearing about the Homebush exchange coming down, right? So you know that there are train delays, that it's not reliable. So these consequences that we would see in such a scenario are not necessarily things that are new to this ecosystem and economy. It's just the means by which is about to change. And the more that we go through digital transformation, we embrace the internet, which we should. I mean, there are significant benefits for society and economies worldwide, but it comes with risk. And really what this is about measuring that risk and actually taking that more holistically. So one of the things I would say to that scenario is you would understand the consequences of such an event, and you would look at the means by which it could be affected. And one of those is actually cyber. The means by which is being employed in cybersecurity is advanced. And a couple of years ago, we would be saying that the biggest threat that would be cybersecurity related is actually script kiddies, or people that want to deface the websites and put up a message to prove their worth. But the attackers' motivations have actually evolved since then. I don't think we as humans have evolved so much, but certainly their motivations have. And if you looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we can actually pinpoint some of that. And if you were reversing those needs, because they're quite positive, you can actually understand the motivations of attackers around greed, political gain. And if you understand our political climate, fake news is not necessarily something we should be surprised by. These are techniques that have been used in a physical sense for years. We've just been using digital means to affect them. And that's what we're seeing in cyber. So one of the things in the slide deck that I was really wanting to point to is the definition around cyber and what it really is. It typically is the hoodie. It's the techie. It's that sort of persona. And they exist, and they are important, and they are important to understand. But cyber, at the essence, is about trust. Trust in our economy, trust in our people, and how do we build that confidence. But it's something that can be eroded very quickly, very hard to gain, very easy to lose. And what we've seen is that while we are, as an economy and as a society, embracing technology advances, there's an undercurrent of cyber that actually needs to be well understood. And in some cases, what I would point to is the usual analogy around cyber is it's like the brakes in a Ferrari. Ferrari was designed to go fast at all cases, and yeah, it looks pretty and it's very expensive, but effectively it's designed to go very fast. It's designed to be a prowess of engineering. But if you didn't have the brakes, would you be able to safely go fast? And that's the same thing with cybersecurity. If you consider it upfront, the costs are much less, but they burden 10 times over if you don't. But if you were to consider it, and this is the same thing for business as you're looking to embrace it and look at new business models, it is the brakes in that Ferrari. And if you were to take that approach, it would actually manage some of these risks more carefully. The sort of things that I would probably point to is, and I don't want to do cybersecurity risk management by PR or media, but they do point to a couple of cases where, in most cases, when you talk about cybersecurity in the scenarios, people think that these are edge cases. These are things that will never happen in our society, that we will not be affected because we're not a bank. But banks have things that people want to trade from. So there's financial gain, there's incredible amounts of data that have huge value in the marketplace, but so does every other business, and increasingly so. So what I wanted to point to was a couple of interesting cases to date that I think point to some of the things that you need to consider when you look at risk management in cyber. And that's because if you are a critical infrastructure provider, whether you manage the energy grids, the water supplies, as was in that example, it's really relevant to you for a number of reasons. And I can talk more than my 8 minutes, so I'll cut it really soon. There's a couple of things you need to be aware of. Those systems were designed many, many years ago to be open and highly available. That is the core of those systems. But they're not designed to have security. They're not designed to be authenticated. They're not designed to demonstrate integrity per se. They're designed for a different world. And yet, what we're finding is that they are increasingly connected to the internet, right? And in and of itself, it's a bit of a Wild West. And as you can tell, you might think that these systems are not connected to the internet because you didn't physically enable it. But I can give you a website, you can probably find your server on there and your system. So, and that's really just for awareness, to make